Welcome, everybody, to Full Moon Paranormal's very first podcast. Today, I got a guest with me, Jocelyn Mahoney.
Hello.
She is going to be a new member of the team, or group, whatever you like to call it. She's going to be an investigator in training. And I would like to take this moment for two things. One is that we thought we were recording this. We went about 20 minutes, I think. And then I realized the button was flashing, the little red button was flashing, and I said, oh my God, we got to do this whole thing over. So here we are. We're going to explain everything that we just talked about, hopefully, if we can remember what we talked about. And the other thing I want to mention is that anybody that's watched the our prior YouTube shows, we had a gentleman named Tom. He was basically a best friend of mine for 20 years. Co-founded the group for me, or with me rather. Excuse me. And he decided to go his own way. He's no longer with the group. I have no explanations why, but he's no longer with me and the group. So let's get to it. If I can remember what it was that I first asked you. Do you remember it all?
I mean, we went over sort of some of the paranormal stuff I've experienced. Starting
True.
with...
That's right.
Yeah, starting with at my dad's work was where I saw my first apparition, I guess,
Okay.
in the upstairs bathroom of a very old building that he worked at.
Okay. So Jocelyn already explained this to me a little while ago, and now she's going to have to go back and try to remember everything that she told me. So explain again to the audience what this place was, where it was, and what it is now, and what you experienced.
So, it was a DYS facility that my father worked at. That was in a building on the North Shore out in Middleton, Mass. is where he was located, called NFI Shelter Care at the time. That prior to becoming the DYS was sort of a building that housed sick people, where lots of people would go with terminal illness to sort of live out the rest of their days. It was an all-boys facility, so when I would go and visit, I would have to use a separate bathroom that was located on the second floor, which was basically just like an attic and storage spacing, and then there was just this random bathroom, and everything in this building too was dated. Like, this bathroom it looked like it came out of like the 50s, and I saw a woman that was in like an old time dress who followed me out of the storage room into the bathroom, and I remember being scared and calling my mom, who then came up and she was gone. And ever since that day, like, I never went up those stairs alone again.
Now, this woman that you saw, though, I mean, you say she was in old-time clothes. Was this like day or night, or?
It was like afternoon.
Afternoon, so there was plenty of light, natural light
Yes.
coming in, and you still happen to see this woman. Would you say you could see from head to toe, or was it basically? I mean.
Yes, I would say I could see from head to toe.
And did she know she would, like, you were there? Was she doing her own thing? I mean, how much do you remember?
What I can remember now, I was 6 years old, so this was 20
okay,
years
so
ago. So I just remember her standing in the bathroom with me, staring at me.
Yeah.
And calling for my mom, and when my mom opened the door, it kind of went into her and she disappeared.
You know, it's funny that you brought up that you were 6, because I'm not sure if I mentioned this to you or not when we were talking about this a while back, about children seeing apparitions or ghosts. It's said that the children can usually see only because, let me strike that. Children, I'm trying to think how to best explain this.
Well, the innocence, right?
Well, it's
the
part of the
child.
innocence, and it's they don't know fact from fiction.
Exactly.
So, I mean, a lot of times you hear stories of a young toddler saying they're playing with grandpa, and then, you know, the mother of the child would be like, "Who are you talking? What are you talking about? What do you mean you're playing with grandpa? You know, grandpa's gone. You know." But apparently, the child is talking with him, playing with him, whatever. So, I've always been told that if a child is ever involved with something like that, to let it be, because I guess you could say that you don't. Again, I'm stuck for words. I'm trying to figure out the easiest way to explain it, but it's something that you just don't want them to
lose faith in.
Put it this way,
It's
I would
too
never.
big for
I
them
would
to grasp really the whole picture of it. Today,
Yeah,
I
because
guess.
it's hard. It'd be hard to explain to a 5-year-old, 6-year-old that Grandpa's not there, and then you're going to confuse him or her more because they are seeing them. So basically, it's you wait till a bit older, and sometimes as they get older, and once they start understanding fact from fiction, just on a normal basis as they grow up, they may not see that person anymore.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when I was young, I never saw anything. I wasn't even into the paranormal, really. The only closest people I think that had gone when I was little were my grandfathers. One of my grandfathers died, I think, 6 months before I was born, and then the other one is maybe like 6 months after I was born. So those were the closest two that had ever passed away to me. And all through my young age, teenage years, even in my 20s, no one that I was close to had ever passed away. So recently, I mean, things had happened. But because of what I know now, it might be tougher for me to see. I mean, I remember my grandmother telling me, the last grandmother that I had that passed away, we used to talk about if she ever died, what she would do. She'd say, leave a penny on the table, draw like a little circle around it, and then, I'll move it. I tried that many times, and guess what? That penny never ever moved. So I don't know what to say about that one, but yeah, it's interesting when it comes to little kids.
Yeah.
You were gonna say something?
But yeah, so I don't really remember how my mom handled it, but I think she did tell me about ghosts and just like the good things, like they're not all scary, blah blah blah. Because from then on, I remember like believing in ghosts. But she also, I found out later on that there had been many sightings in that place. So I think she had seen this ghost before, and it was sort of like that was the second floor lady that was always there. But speaking of children, I also, one of my experiences was with my son, actually. He was about 2 at the time, and we were visiting my grandmother's sister, who, there was 3 of them. It was my grandmother and her 2 sisters. One of her sisters had recently passed away after a long battle with ALS, and we were all sitting at the table having lunch, dinner, which I forget what time it was, and Aiden kept turning around and like baby babbling, like he was talking to somebody though.
Now, hold on one sec. I just want to mention that Aiden is Jocelyn's son.
Yes.
How old is he again?
He'll be 6 in April.
He's 6 in April, so
he was about 2.5 at the time, 2.5.
Okay.
And so he was like baby babbling. We didn't think much of it, but then it turned back and like eat a little bit, and then like turn back around, and it was like he was talking to somebody. And so we asked him, like, who are you talking to? And he knew some words, and he said auntie. And so we thought that was weird because none of his aunts.
Yeah.
And so then later on, like, we were just thinking about it, and now my whole family believes in the paranormal, so my mom was a little bit sort of like, went over to a picture of the sisters together. So the sister that he was with, Aunt Phil, my grandmother, and then the one that had recently passed, and they asked which one was auntie, and he pointed and said auntie to the sister that had recently just passed.
Yeah, see, so again, what I said before about children and toddlers seeing, I mean, it's there, I mean,
yeah.
they don't know fact from fiction, and if they're going to see who they're going to see. I mean,
the crazy thing about that too with him is he had never really met her, because like I said, she was battling ALS, and at that point, like even when he was born, she was pretty much bedridden.
Yeah.
So he had never seen her or anything before, and so it just was crazy that he was like, that one.
Death is kind of a funny thing, because when my first grandmother passed away, she was in the hospital, and I think it was my father. There was a couple people in there, 2 or 3, and I wasn't there that day, but I was told about this. Is that I don't know if she was conscious. She was talking a little bit, I think, from what I remember, and I think it was my father or my mother was saying that she had she was talking to her parents or something, and then at one point, I think maybe that same day, she had seen my cousin's husband at the time, because he had actually passed away, I think maybe that the year before, and she said that my cousin's husband Jimmy was there, and which is, again, she's on her deathbed, but she's conscious, she sees things. I mean, that's again what I'm trying to get at is, even if you're on your deathbed, sometimes those family members will come see you, and then of course when you get people that don't believe in this sort of thing, they're gonna say she's just imagining it, but for me, I wouldn't underestimate, when people are on that path, they start to see their loved ones that had been deceased before them, which is which is a really cool thing, because I don't want to get into the whole religion aspect of it, but I would like to think that there's a heaven that, one day I'm going to see somebody again. So it's a pretty cool thing.
And that is a cool concept. I like that concept. And recently, my dad, the same thing had happened. When he was on his way out. He saw his brother and his father, who were both deceased, and it was saying, they're coming to visit me. They've been coming to visit me the past couple of days. Yeah. Which was kind of crazy, because this was a few days before he actually passed himself, and so he was still pretty aware and conscious, and was just saying how, Howie was here, and my father was here, and then just a few days later, he also passed. Yeah. So it's kind of a cool thing to think about, that maybe those people did really come to help him into whatever the afterlife may be. But yeah, I've heard a lot of stories of people seeing past relatives right around the days. Yeah,
and it's funny because with people like such as myself, being a paranormal investigator, it's one of those topics where if it comes up in conversation and someone's not a believer, they're going to throw the old excuse, you're on drugs or you're drinking or whatever, and you see these things. But I'll tell you, I can say it's fact, especially when it comes down to two or more people and they see the same exact thing, or they're experiencing the same exact thing. You can't question it. Yep. So it's a fun field. I encourage, people that are been wanting to do this to go out and try it. And that just leads me to something real quick too, is with my group, we have we don't have top-notch equipment. When you don't need top-notch equipment to do this sort of thing, you just need some meters that read electronic waves, I guess you could call them, or
electromagnetic fields.
Well, it's electromagnetic field. Yeah, but I think I was coming up with some other word in my head. But you have gadgets all over. Like a regular electrician has meters that you can use for the same thing. We had these meters. We had small cameras. That's all you really need to do this sort of thing. And you get these shows that have all this expensive equipment. Who knows, thousands of dollars worth of equipment, and they capture nothing. And it just, as a interesting story, if anybody's ever out there that's watched Ghost Hunters or TAPS, whatever you'd like to call them, they actually investigated a place here in Worcester, Massachusetts. For anybody who's not from this area, it's called Higgins Armory rather. It's not Higgins anymore, but the building is still there. And apparently, this was a museum of all like old artifacts. There was some story behind it that some of the stuff was original. So we had gone there, and we went down to this refurbishing room, and there was we had a little K2 meter. It's called a K2 meter. Again, if you want to know what that is, you can either look it up or watch our first episode that we did. We talked about some equipment that we use. But anyway, we just took this. It's a $50 little gadget. We were asking questions. The things were lighting up. So, you know, you don't need much. And then when Taps went there, I think they went there like a year or two later, bringing all their thousands of dollars worth of equipment. Caught nothing compared to what we caught. We caught and debunked the screaming women. The screaming women. We were in the refurbishing room again, like I was mentioning, and we were apparently talking to John Higgins himself. That was not even on the show, on their show rather. So that just proves my point that you could have a couple $100s worth of equipment, capture a ton of stuff. You can have a professional, well, I don't want to call them professionals, but you can go in with another team, or another team can go in with tons of equipment, thousands of dollars worth of equipment, and they ain't going to catch nothing. So, yeah, wherever I was going with this, I don't remember. This is why sometimes I wish I had a third person in here to kind of like, sometimes podcasts are better when you get 3 people.
Yep.
Because then you have, like, if 2 people like ourselves are kind of like, what do we talk about next? You know, then you have the other third person kind of kick in and, you know, and kind of give us a little kick and
different point of view.
Yeah.
Well, I know that for myself, in my teenage years, I was sort of more of a non-believer until I played with a Ouija board.
Oh, no.
Yes, which I had been told by my mother, actually, to never play with them because they are dangerous. And me, being my rebellious self, decided to not listen and find out for myself. And me and my friend got ourselves haunted.
Oh, did you get haunted after you played with the Ouija board?
Correct.
I mean, was it like that same day? Can you remember? Or was
I remember this like clearly. This is what made me like a full-on like believer, and this is when I started, like, me and my friends would go out in groups, like doing some, like, you know, investigations. Was because of this. But so it started. We actually made the Ouija board because we looked up that you don't actually need like a real Ouija board. You can actually make them. So we made one, you know, lit a candle in the room, had the lights all low, did the whole like shabam, and ended up talking to what we thought was a little boy, which I now know a lot of times the more darker spirits will hide themselves as children because you're more likely to trust them. Yeah. And where I come from is Natick, and it's actually a very big Indian town. We actually have like an Indian cemetery in downtown Natick, and it's all very controversial. If you look at the history of it, lots of murder of the Indians and things like that. But so it was like a little Native American boy who came through and told us like all of his stuff about how like he was sick, he was waiting for his dad, and that's why he was still here, and like all of this stuff. And then, like, you know, we did the whole goodbye thing like you're supposed to close the circle. And then we went to the bathroom to like get ready for bed basically, and my friend had like a weird sensation on her back and like asked me to look at it, and I looked at it and she had 3 red marks going down her back, which it looked pretty claw-like, but we didn't think much of it. We figured, you know, she must have bumped something or ran into something, sort of just ignored it, went to bed. And then the next morning, a friend of ours, so a third person, came, picked her up, brought her to her house where she could take a shower, and I stayed at my house to take a shower. And when I went to get into the shower, I saw this same mark on my back. And again, was just like coincidence, like whatever. And I'm almost done with my shower, and all of a sudden, my friend runs through the door, is banging on the bathroom door, like, "Are you okay? Are you all right?" And I was like, taken aback, you know. I was like, "Are you okay? Like, what is going on?" Get out of the shower, and you know how like it gets all foggy and like your windows and everything fog up?
Let me guess, something was on the window? Or
something was on the mirror, yes. Which, like, you know how like if you draw something on the mirror and then like it'll come back, but it's not fresh. Like, and when it's fresh, you can tell that it's like fresh in the mirror. There's a fresh handprint on the mirror, like dripping wet. And so I like screamed. I freaked out because it wasn't me. I know like it wasn't an old thing or something like that. And so she was like, "Oh my God, do you see it? Do you see it?" And I opened the door, and said third friend that had come was a witness for both of these. Came in and saw it, and my friend Jenna, same thing had happened to her in her bathroom. Really? And from then that time on, like, shit got crazy.
Yeah. This is why I kind of wish I had still had Tom here, because he was good with this stuff. He knew a lot of the technical side of the paranormal when it came to, Ouija boards and mythology and I think what do you call it, demonology or something like that. Without him here, I'm almost clueless. I mean, I know the story, some of the stories behind a Ouija board. People would ask me, well, why do they sell them? Well, because they make money. There's a lot of people out there that don't believe in that sort of thing, but they'll buy it because, A, it's cool, and B, they want to try it, and then C, they try it, and all of a sudden they become a believer because something happens, But I always usually tell people or ask people, or I should say clients, if they have a Ouija board. And, it's up to them if they want to get rid of it or not. I'm skeptic on the Ouija board. I mean, with your case, I'm still skeptic. As a paranormal investigator, you can be skeptic on certain things, when it comes to stuff like that. What do they call them? The wands there. I can't remember what the heck they used. Those like wands that used to be able to find water underground, but they use them also in the paranormal because of the electromagnetic field that'll cross when you hit.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Those things, and they say you just hold them lightly in your hand and they'll turn on their own. Again, I'm a skeptic on that because it's very easily. I've had them in my hand before, and it's very easily to move. Just a tiny little movement of your hand, you can make those things move and say, "Oh, I found something," when you really didn't. Just kind of making it look like you did. So, I'll ask people, like I said, if they have a Ouija board, and if they do, I'll explain a little bit about what I know, but I'm not going to tell anybody to get rid of it. I just want them to think that, there's a possibility that you could open something if you haven't already.
Mm-hmm.
People ask, well, why does it take a Ouija board? That's where I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, for me, what I know is I feel like it's just a very easy way for you to open up connection and open up sort of. You're basically asking them to come, right? When you're starting up with a Ouija board, you're calling these spirits to come to talk with you. So I think it's just very easy for people who don't really know or understand what they're, getting into to invite something that they may not want there, which I think was our case. We just didn't know what we were doing. I also slightly believe that we had already had maybe like a slight attachment on ourselves, because we had been going to this place in the woods of Natick that is supposedly haunted. All of like the townies and everything talk about it. And so I'm wondering if we had just opened up that communication to like really let it attach to us, and maybe that's what it was, and not necessarily the Ouija board. But all I know is we ultimately decided to get rid of the Ouija board and we burned it. So
yeah, but my mother bought one years ago. I think this is when I was a teenager, and I think it was a gift for me. I'm not sure, because I have a brother that's 8 years younger, and I don't think she would have bought it for a 7-year-old. But I mean, I could be wrong. So I remember we tried it one night. And it was just me and my mother, and, we put our fingers on it. And of course, she's moving it, and I'm saying, you're moving it. She's like, no, you're moving it. But I don't recall really ever, what kind of questions we asked, if any. And that was like the first and last time we ever used it. But nothing happened. Nothing came in. Again, this is when I was a teenager, and I really didn't start believing in the paranormal or really getting into the paranormal until my later years. Probably like in my 20s. Actually, again, if you watch the first episode, I got all my bio on there when I got into it. But I think it was basically after my grandmother had passed away is kind of like when I started getting into it. And that was, I was like 30, my young 30s, I think. Yeah, my daughter was just born. So she was born in 2005. No, yeah, 2005. Yeah, so my grandmother died almost a month of the day after. And I think that's the same time that Taps was on TV. That kind of really got me into it. So, yeah. Let's see, what else? I was thinking about something, and of course I forgot. Let's ask our imaginary friend to talk with us.
But yeah, so have you guys ever like experienced like lights or things like that? Like any sort of like lights flashing, things falling?
I've never experienced any lights going off. I've experienced seeing shadows. I actually saw twice, and actually one was at Higgins Armory. There was a gift shop. Again, if anybody knows or has ever been in there, there used to be a gift shop, and someone has set the camera down on a table facing the racks, or whatever you want to call them. And then at the end of the rack, you kind of saw a black shadow kind of look out to the side for, I don't know, what seemed like a few seconds, and then head back in. I didn't see it happen. I saw it on the video. Can't explain it because the building was high. You know, there was no car lights coming in. What was it? Listen, to anybody that knows what it's like being a person my age, working a long day, and then coming to do a podcast, your mind forgets things as you're talking. so hopefully somebody out there can relate to me a little bit if I go off track. Yes, but what was I was answering your question to,
like seeing lights or things falling or any sort of manifestations like that, I guess.
Well, the shadow, like I mentioned to earlier, I think that was a manifestation, you know, where it turned into this black figure, and then kind of walked right in front of me. But yeah, like I said, no lights ever flashed. Never seen the the sink turn on by itself. There's a lot that I haven't experienced, and I've been doing this for a while, you know, off and on, not a consistent amount of time. I think I started back in 2009 or 2010 is when I started this. So 10 years, a handful of cases. I've seen my share, felt my share, but it never gets old.
Yeah.
You know, and when you go in, I'm telling you, when you go into your first investigation, you're gonna feel it. You're gonna feel that energy. You're gonna know the stories of what the client mentioned. So when you go in, you're expecting it, but you can't expect it. You know what I mean? It's one of those things like, okay, I know the story. I know there's this thing that apparently they see this black shadow, you know, on a corner wall. So you sitting there staring, and then nothing happens. You don't catch anything on video recorder. And you got to remember also that a lot of times these things don't want you to know that they're there. You know, they'll be quiet all night long. There's been a handful of cases where we've gone over all our evidence, you know, maybe didn't find anything, you know, on a recorder or anything, but we'll call them up, or they'll call us and say, as soon as you left, things start happening again. Things knocking on the walls, everything. And we tried knocking on the walls. We do the little shaving or haircut thing.
Yeah.
Never got a response, you know, and then we leave and boom, noises start right back up.
Yeah.
But I got like a little, not a quiz, but I want to see if you know what this means, because I think a lot of people take this word out of context. I think that's the right word I want to use, but it's the word poltergeist. Now, when you hear that word,
yes,
what does that mean to you, or unless you actually know what it is?
I guess I don't know the actual definition, but what that to me means is just a spirit that is able to affect our world in a way, I guess is how I would explain that. Like, if you have poltergeist activity, you have something that is able to do the lights or move or somehow manifest itself so that we in this dimension can see or feel or know that they're there.
Right. It's basically, the reason I ask is because I think some people have a misunderstanding of the word, because if people have seen the old movies Poltergeist,
I feel like they think it's like a bad demon type thing.
Yes, they're showing it's all bad stuff, but I learned in the past that actually a poltergeist is not necessarily a demon. It's just basically a noisy spirit.
Yes.
You know, whether they're doing it on purpose or they're just doing it on not knowing that they're doing it, but they just bang things, move things, but they're not necessarily evil. You know, I haven't experienced anything like that. I think a poltergeist is probably harder to find than a normal spirit inside of a home, because like a lot of the ones I've been to have been quiet. You know, besides the little touch on the back of the neck, or I don't even think we've ever captured any words, to be honest with you. I don't. Now that I think about it, I don't think we ever captured any voices. Just some banging. I don't know if I ever said this on the first show that I did. But the one thing that kind of creeped me out, well, creeped me out in a good way, was we're in this little house. We went here 3 times, and I think the last time that we were there, this was when my group had like about 6, 7 people in it. And we were all sitting in one room. It was late at night, and I think it was like our last hour we were there, and I had the headphones on with the recorder, so I could hear things more vividly and clearer. And all of a sudden, we're sitting there just quiet, maybe asking some questions, and all of a sudden it sounded like I hear like almost like little tap shoes on the hardwood floor in the hallway. And I remember asking, I said, "You guys hear that?" And they could actually hear that as well, not just me. I thought it was because I had the headphones on. So, and it sounded like a little child running up and down the hallway with these little tap shoes on there. And it was like creepy, but it was awesomely insane, if that's even the right word to use. You know, it was so cool. So, and the funny thing is that there was never any mention about a child in that house. I can't remember what it was, but there was never any mention. At least the first two times that we were there was never any mention about a young girl or a young boy in the house. So I mean, it could have. Sometimes things new pop up for whatever reason. You know, it's hard to say. No one still has any answers of how this stuff exists and where it comes from. You know, it's just one of those things that's going to take a long time to figure out. I mean, even with all the equipment that you have, it still doesn't answer certain questions. Yeah. You know, so. Well, let's see. What do we got for time here? Let's see, we're looking at 31 minutes. Wow. This time we are recording, people. I really hope so. I just hope something doesn't happen to this now by the time I get to edit it tomorrow.
Oh, man.
But, so Jocelyn is going to be, I guess, like I said, she's going to be the new investigator in training. We're hoping to kind of kick things off, hopefully by spring. Again, the link to the YouTube page will be, at the end of the credits, and the email address. I know I mentioned this earlier. I just wasn't sure if it was in the pre-recording that I wasn't recording in, or if I recorded it now. But I'm not putting my phone number on, so if you're interested in having us come down in the near future, email us. And that's it. We hope to see you. If anybody's interested in ever doing a podcast with me and Full Moon Paranormal, again, we'd love to have you on. We'll have Jocelyn here to be my third wheel this time, and we'll go from there. So appreciate everybody listening, and we'll take care. And there was one thing I want to say, and I'm not sure if I'm going to stick with it. Tom came up with this little quote. It was "Stay scared," and I didn't really like it at first, but it was one of those things where it was like a no pun intended. It was just like a crazy, cool little thing to say at the end of the show, and we would say, "Remember, stay scared." So it's not meaning to actually stay scared. It's just a fun little, whatever you want to call it, little quote that means absolutely nothing. Just so don't be scared.
Stay curious.
Stay curious. I think that was actually one of them, but didn't really ring. Tom didn't like it. I had to give Tom some sort of credit in this because he was like a co-founder of this. So, but again, like I said, he's not here no more. So maybe we'll just change that. Not even say stay scared anymore. Who knows? Maybe Jocelyn will come up with a new little quote. We'll see. But until then, we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining. This is Brett with Full Moon Paranormal and Jocelyn Mahoney. I think I said it right again.
You sure did.
Signing off. See you next time.